Logos, POW!
Today I'd like to talk about a game that has always been one of my favourites, Space Harrier. I was 14 when I encountered a huge hydraulic seat version of the arcade machine. Yu Suzuki's idea of drawing players in with huge moving cabinets worked charmingly. Hang On, released a year before that, was just a little too big for me to play with at that age. Space Harrier had an unusual style. The colourful graphics of the Fantasy Zone were mesmerising. Checkerboard floor, abstract backgrounds, flying aliens, huge robots, rock heads, woolly mammoths and huge bosses. Oh, those bosses, spinning formations and serpent-like dragons, sometimes with two heads. This all moved at an amazing speed, and with the movement of the cabinet, it immersed you in the action. It wasn't easy though, in fact it was bloody hard. I got better and better at it, to the point where I could get as far as the second Dragon Rider segment in one credit. Did I mention you could ride a dragon in it? Yes, the bonus stages had you ride a dragon and crash it into obstacles to get bonus points. The music is another high point. There's only one main theme, but it's arranged in such a way that it doesn't get old. There's also a few boss themes, and the bonus and high score themes are also excellent. So, an excellent arcade game, which in 1987 got conversions to home computers. This seemed to be a crazy ambition. Elite Systems picked up the rights to do it, following on from their success with Capcom's Commando and Ghosts and Goblins as competent arcade conversions. The computer gaming press was sceptical. Could it be done? Well, when the game was released, the results were, well, mixed. The Spectrum version looked good in screenshots, but it became a somewhat confusing mess in gameplay. The Amstrad version, for some reason, had wireframe graphics for the enemies, contrasting with the sprite used for the player character, like waving an action figure in front of a sky full of coat hangers. Then there was the conversion I bought, the Commodore 64 version, and I, 14-year-old me, was looking forward to it. The programmer, Chris Butler, was quoted to have said in an interview with Zap64's Gary Penn, "I'm quietly confident." Butler had previously handled the programming of both Commando and Ghosts and Goblins for Elite, which in both cases the resulting games were well regarded. To say the C64 version was lacking was about right. The checkerboard floor was missing, the player character looked good, but also looked like he was riding a unicycle while running. The enemy sprites looked pretty, but had an ugly outline when they overlapped. The music was alright, a bit whiny. Sadly, the bonus stages were missing, and as were many of the bosses. Still, the 3D effect was probably as good as could be expected at the time. Chris Butler must have made an impression with Space Harrier, as he produced Commodore 64 versions of Thunderblade for US Gold and Power Drift for Activision, the latter of which was surprisingly a very playable version of Sega's Racer. A reasonable version appeared on the Amiga, also from Elite Systems. Otherwise, if you wanted to play at home, you had a choice of the Sega Master System version, the handheld Game Gear version, or the PC Engine version, all of which were adequate in their own ways. Now, the arcade version on occasion would present the player with a message mentioning that new battle scenes would soon be available. And in a way they would be, just not in the arcades. Space Harrier 2 was released as a launch title for Sega's Mega Drive console in 1998, then converted to the Amiga, Atari ST and the older 8-bit machines in 1990. It really wasn't very good. The Mega Drive was ill-equipped to handle the fast action required, and the soul of the original just wasn't there. It was a pale sequel, if truth be told. Plus, some of the music was awful. The Fantasy Zone was quiet for years, until in 1994 Sega released the 32X, an add-on for the Mega Drive. A version of the original Space Harrier was released on it, and while not arcade perfect, had all the arcade game's features, all the stages, the bosses, the bonus stage, and all the music. It's a shame that Sega's Magic Mushroom was too overpriced and underpowered to make a marked sales prize, but it was the only way to play a decent version of the game. That wasn't until 1997, Sega released the Saturn Sega Ages compilation. Space Harrier, along with Outrun and Afterburner, appeared on the disc in their arcade glory. It was a major reason for me to own a Saturn. In 1999, Sega released the long-awaited epic Shenmue on the Sega Dreamcast. In this game, you could visit an arcade and play Space Harrier. This version was later released on the disc included in Yu Suzuki's GameWorks book, which is worth a look if you can find a copy for a couple of quid. After the dawn of the new millennium, Sega started to rework its old 3D games with new graphics on the PS2's 3D Ages series. A version of Space Harrier was among them. Oh my god, what did they do? It was an ugly abomination of a game. The colourful Fantasy Zone was more like a rainy day in Basildon. The graphics had more sharp edges than a box of broken razor blades, and the dragons looked like they could do with a good meal. The explosions looked like ink blots, the only saving grace being the remixed music. Sega redeemed itself a couple of years later with what I regard as the best Sega compilation disc, the Space Harrier Complete Collection, which includes the arcade version of Space Harrier, Space Harrier 2 from the Mega Drive, the Master System version of Space Harrier and Space Harrier 3D. Also included is the Game Gear version of the game as an unlockable bonus. You also get a nice little badge. Most recently, 3D Space Harrier was released for the Nintendo 3DS. Again, a great version of the game which uses a stereoscopic display of Nintendo's handheld well. It also simulates the cabinet to a degree. So, that's Space Harrier. On the surface, a simplistic shooter that's about as deep as a toddler's paddling pool, which despite this, becomes more than the sum of its parts, becoming a fast and exhilarating arcade shoot-'em up. Well, thanks for watching. Wait! What about Planet Harriers? Sort of Space Harrier 3? I don't know. I've never played it. I've never seen it in an arcade. It's not currently emulated, nor is it being ported to any home machines. I've seen some videos. Looks like Space Harrier, but with a lock-on and view change mechanics stolen from Panzer Dragoon. It's got multiple characters, one of which is a nurse who has a huge syringe, which is nice. Anyway, that's my thoughts on an arcade favourite which over the years has had good versions and bad. Thank you for watching, and hopefully see you soon. Here, subscribe or naff off.